My name is Morgrat, and I used to believe life was steady, predictable, even if sometimes unbearably quiet. I had a husband, Daniel, who provided stability, an orderly man who measured his days and schedules and routines. Our marriage had become much the same. Functional, polite, but stripped of passion. We moved through the motions like well-trained actors in a play neither of us fully believed in anymore. He would kiss me goodnight, but there was no fire behind it. I would laugh at his jokes, though they rarely reached my heart. From the outside, we were fine. Inside, I felt hollow. That hollow space had grown louder in recent years. I tried to fill it with chores, with endless scrolling, with television humming in the background. But when the noise faded, the silence between Daniel and me swallowed me whole. I began to wonder if this was all marriage ever became, a quiet companionship, lacking both thrill and intimacy. I told myself I could endure it. After all, wasn't comfort better than chaos? Then came the day a stranger knocked on my door. It was ordinary at first. A simple delivery, a cardboard box tucked under one arm. The man was tall, his uniform slightly worn, his cap pulled low over his dark hair. Yet when he looked up at me, I noticed his eyes, uncommonly warm, uncommonly present, as though he wasn't just handing over a package, but stepping into my life in ways I could not yet fathom. "Package for Morgrat?" he asked, his voice calm, almost curious about my name. I nodded, reaching for the box. Our fingers brushed, and in that fleeting contact, something sparked. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself he was only a delivery guy. But that evening, long after I set the package aside and Daniel recited office gossip across the dinner table, I kept thinking about the stranger's gaze, steady, unguarded, and far too memorable for such a trivial encounter. Days later, he returned with another delivery. This time his smile carried familiarity, like we shared some unspoken recognition. "Another one for you, Morgrat," he said lightly, as if fate itself had orchestrated excuses to cross our paths again. I should have closed the door quickly. Instead, I lingered. We exchanged a few harmless words, about the weather, about the frequency of deliveries. Yet beneath the casualness, there was a tension neither of us acknowledged but both of us felt. And in that moment, I knew. My life, once predictable and dull, had just shifted. A door had opened wider than the one I stood in front of. I didn't yet understand how dangerous that spark could become, or how deeply it would test the fragile threads holding my marriage together. But as his footsteps faded down the path, I realized I wanted him to come back. And wanting, that was the beginning of everything. Daniel, my husband, was a man people admired for his dependability. He worked long hours at his firm, never missing deadlines, never raising his voice, never failing to pay a bill or fix a leaky faucet. To others, he was steady, even enviable, a provider, a man who stood like a pillar in every storm. And yet for me, his steadiness had turned into stone walls. Conversations that once carried laughter and shared dreams had become reports of meetings, updates on expenses, and small talk about traffic. Our marriage functioned, but it no longer breathed. I used to tell myself passion was overrated, that love matured into quiet companionship. But when Ethan, the delivery man, began showing up at my door, I realized how starved I had become for even the smallest spark of connection. Ethan was younger than Daniel, though not by much. He had an easy smile that carried a warmth Daniel's words no longer reached. His hands bore calluses from long hours lifting packages, but there was a gentleness in the way he passed a box to me, as though even cardboard deserved careful handling. More than anything, it was his attentiveness that unsettled me. He looked at me as if I mattered, not as a fixture in a household, but as a woman with unspoken thoughts, unasked questions, and unmet needs. The conflict began quietly, like the first tremors before an earthquake. Each time Ethan appeared, I lingered longer at the door. A minute stretched into 5, 5 into 10. Our exchanges deepened, moving from weather to books, from books to dreams. He confessed that he felt stuck in life, driving routes day after day, waiting for a chance at something better. I confessed little in return, but the way I leaned against the door frame, listening, betrayed my hunger for his words. At night, I lay beside Daniel, wondering how two men could be so different. Daniel gave me stability, but Ethan gave me attention. Daniel promised the future, but Ethan awakened the present. The central conflict of my life began to crystallize in those sleepless hours. Was I to remain in a marriage that offered safety but no passion? Or would I risk everything for the dangerous electricity that surged through me each time Ethan's eyes met mine? I knew the line I was tiptoeing toward. Infidelity is not a single act. It is a series of tiny permissions. A series of doors you keep unlocked until one day you step through. I told myself I was only enjoying the harmless thrill of being noticed. But in truth, I was already drifting, carried by a current I could no longer deny. The last time Ethan delivered that month, he lingered a little longer than usual. "Funny how some doors start to feel familiar," he said, his smile almost shy. I closed the door with my heart racing, a silent admission echoing inside me. This was no longer chance. It was the beginning of choice. Ethan's visits became a rhythm I secretly lived for. I told myself it was coincidence, that his route simply passed my street more often than others. Yet the way his eyes brightened when I opened the door suggested otherwise. He lingered longer each time, asking about my day, listening in a way Daniel no longer did. His attention was addictive, gentle, disarming, dangerous. I found myself preparing for him without realizing it. On days I suspected he might come, I styled my hair, slipped into a dress instead of worn pajamas, even applied lipstick under the excuse of just feeling like it. Each gesture betrayed a longing I refused to name. I told myself it was harmless, but deep down, I knew I was feeding a fire. One afternoon, rain streaked down the windows when he arrived. His uniform was damp, his hair curling at the edges beneath his cap. He laughed as he shook droplets from his arms, handing me the package. "Looks like the storm caught me," he said, water glistening on his skin. Without thinking, I invited him inside to dry off. It was the smallest of courtesies, but the moment the door closed behind him, the air shifted. He stood in my kitchen, dripping slightly on the floor, looking around as though stepping into another world. "It's warm here," he murmured, almost as if he wasn't talking about the temperature. I poured him a cup of tea, my hands trembling as I placed it before him. Our conversation that day wandered further than ever, about loneliness, about choices, about the lives we wished we were living. His honesty disarmed me. He admitted he feared mediocrity, that driving boxes from one door to another sometimes made him feel invisible. "You're not invisible," I said softly, the words leaving my lips before I could stop them. He looked at me then, really looked, and in his gaze I felt exposed, as if he had stripped away every defense I had built. That night, lying beside Daniel, guilt gnawed at me. He was asleep within minutes, his breathing even and steady. I stared at the ceiling, haunted by Ethan's eyes. My heart thudded with the truth I wanted to deny. I wasn't merely flattered by Ethan's attention. I was drawn to him, body and soul. The next time Ethan came, the tension between us was undeniable. He handed me the package, but neither of us moved to let go. Our fingers pressed together, too long for chance, too deliberate to dismiss. My breath caught, and in that pause, the boundary between temptation and transgression thinned to almost nothing. "Morgrat," he whispered, as if speaking my name was both confession and plea. I pulled my hand back quickly, clutching the box to my chest. "I can't," I murmured, though the words lacked conviction. He nodded, stepping back, but the look in his eyes told me everything. This was only the beginning, and in my heart, I knew he was right. The line I swore I would never cross dissolved one quiet evening when Daniel stayed late at the office. A package arrived just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the walls in amber light. Ethan stood there, shoulders tense as though he too sensed the weight of the moment. He held out the box, but neither of us cared about it. "Are you alone?" he asked softly. I hesitated, pulse racing. Yes, it was an admission more dangerous than any kiss. For a long heartbeat, we stood in silence, suspended between restraint and surrender. Then he stepped inside, closing the door with a gentleness that felt louder than a slam. We didn't rush. We circled each other like two people afraid of gravity but unable to resist its pull. He brushed a strand of hair from my face, his touch tentative, trembling. I could have stepped back. I could have chosen distance. Instead, I leaned into him, and the world collapsed in an instant. His kiss was unlike anything I had felt in years, hungry yet tender, a breaking open of something I had buried so long I almost forgot it existed. Every touch carried both desperation and reverence, as if he was memorizing me. My body responded with an urgency that terrified me, not because it was wrong, but because it felt like remembering who I once was. Afterward, we sat in the dim glow of the living room, neither speaking, the truth pressing down on us. I stared at my wedding band, shining like a cruel reminder of the vows I had just shattered. Guilt clawed at me, but beneath it, another truth rose stronger. I felt alive. More Ethan whispered, his hand brushing mine. I don't want to ruin your life. You already have, I said, my voice breaking. Not in accusation, but in acknowledgement. He hadn't destroyed something whole. He had revealed what was already fractured. The following days were chaos in disguise. I tried to return to normal, cooking dinner, asking Daniel about work, smiling where I was supposed to smile. But Daniel wasn't blind. He noticed the way my eyes drifted, the way my phone lit up with messages I quickly hid. His silence became sharp, filled with unasked questions. Then, one night, he confronted me. Who is he? He asked, his voice low, steady, the kind of calm that trembles with restrained fury. The room spun. I opened my mouth, searching for denial, but the truth sat heavy in my throat. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence said it all. Daniel's eyes filled with something I had never seen before, not anger, not even hatred, but disbelief, betrayal. Was I not enough? He whispered. I wanted to explain, to tell him it wasn't about his worth, but about my emptiness, my hunger to feel something again. But how do you confess that to the man who gave you stability, only to find yourself craving chaos? In that moment, the life I had built cracked wide open, and nothing would ever fit back the same again. The days after Daniel's discovery blurred into a haze of heavy silences and fractured conversations. He didn't scream, didn't throw plates or slam doors. His quietness was far worse. It was the quiet of someone who had lost faith in something sacred. We moved through the same rooms but felt oceans apart, the weight of what I'd done pressing down with every shared glance. Ethan, for his part, kept his distance. He never demanded, never insisted we run away together. His restraint only deepened my conflict. I found myself torn between two versions of myself, the dutiful wife who had vowed loyalty, and the restless woman who had tasted passion and could not unlearn it. At night, lying beside Daniel, I wondered if forgiveness was possible. Could trust ever be rebuilt once shattered? He never said the words, but the question lingered in his eyes each time they met mine. And in those eyes, I saw both the man I had married and the pain I had inflicted. Ethan's memory haunted me in a different way. His laughter, his touch, the way he saw me as more than a fixture in a tidy house, all of it clung to me like a ghost. Yet I knew he was not the solution, not entirely. He was the spark that revealed my emptiness, not the answer to it. The central conflict was no longer just between Daniel and Ethan. It was within me. I had to decide what I truly wanted, stability or passion, safety or authenticity. For the first time, I realized that neither man could make that choice for me. One evening, Daniel asked quietly, "Do you still love me?" I opened my mouth, but no easy answer came. Love was not the question. The real question was whether love, in its quiet form, was enough for the rest of my life, or whether I had the courage to demand more. The story doesn't end neatly. I wish I could say I chose one path and found peace. The truth is, I am still walking the line between them, still learning what it means to be honest with myself. What Ethan gave me was not a future, but a revelation, that I had been living half asleep, and sometimes it takes a stranger's eyes to wake you. He was just a delivery guy. Yet he reminded me of the most dangerous truth of all. Sometimes the greatest betrayals are not against others, but against the parts of ourselves we refuse to honor. and once that truth is seen, it can never be unseen.